hold on to your idealism. Like hold on to those big ideas that you don't think are possible or realistic or attainable, because if there's anything that I think the last 2 decades of environmental justice and urban conservation have shown, is that the impossible is on the menu.
Richard, thank you so much. Great to see you here. I'd love to just dive into some questions, and maybe if you could just tell us a little bit about what you were doing 10 years ago.
The year was it was 2012, and I was transitioning from the center director of Higher Achievement's Alexandria Achievement Center to managing the expansion of programs from DC to Richmond, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh. So Higher Achievement is a pretty well-known, academically rigorous extended learning opportunity for middle school students. So I started out running their Achievement Center, which is essentially like a pretty intense after-school program in Alexandria, working with families from the area, providing homework support, leading trainings for our teachers and tutors. And I ended up moving into a role that had me training other center directors to expand programming in these new cities where higher achievement was starting to have an impact. So that's what I was doing about 10 years ago. It was pretty exciting work. I loved being able to travel between all the different cities.
Fabulous. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
So now I am the executive director for the Friends of Anacostia Park. And, national parks across the country have friends groups that are responsible for the conservation effort. But we aren't like most national parks in that we're not in the middle of nowhere. No disrespect to our rural national park brothers and sisters out there, but we're a national park that is smack dab in the backyard of one of the most vibrant but historically under-resourced communities in Washington, D.C. So in addition to looking out for the preservation of the land and water and the conservation of the different species, we're also very, very concerned with the uplift of the surrounding community. These stewards and park goers that have been supporting Anacostia Park for decades without anyone really noticing or paying attention.
Love to hear you talk a little bit about what's changed in your field over the last 5-10 years.
I think that COVID really shined a light on the importance of green space, the importance of public spaces and how they function, not just as respite for historically stressed and under-resourced communities, but also as like real mental, physical, and social health resources that if you can get that right, if you can make the environment healthy and positive and uplifting, then you set the scene for a lot of this other work, that I was doing before of early childhood literacy and things like that. So the environment matters. And I think that's kind of where we are after 10 plus years of doing this work.
Thanks. When you look around your field and you look around other organizations doing the work that you do, I'd love for you to talk about one thing you wish that organizations could do more of.
Culturally, I think just where I come from and the folks that I interact with, we're all so solution oriented, right? And it's just like, here's a big problem, and then like let's put our minds to work to challenge bust and to figure out the right solution. And I think that what my work, even in the last 9 months with Friends of Anacostia Park, but also my marriage and different mentorship relationships, what it's taught me is that sometimes solutions are less important than just listening to people, and sometimes solutions are less important than building relationships.
And this is a kind of a related question, but what's one big challenge in your field right now that you see?
Well, so I work in the space of conservation, of urban conservation. And so I think I'd be remiss in not acknowledging that when you're talking about urban conservation, you almost have to mention green gentrification in the same breath, right? A lot of the folks that I'm talking to in Ward 7 and Ward 8 here in DC are certainly excited by the restoration of Anacostia Park, this gorgeous national park in their backyards, but they're also really concerned about what that revitalization effort means for surrounding home prices, for the businesses that are going to be set up on this main street at MLK and Good Hope Road. And so I think that the big challenge in the urban environmental space is brokering this tension between revitalization and gentrification, right? How can we build relationships and be solution oriented in a way that really makes sure that the folks that have been in Anacostia for decades are the ones that are going to be enjoying this park once it gets nice. And that's really where our work comes in.
I'd love to hear you talk about something that you've learned as a leader. You've got a great career. Something you've learned as a leader that you wish everyone else knew or kind of understood.
Well, in addition to this realization that maybe I should talk less and listen more to the folks that I'm working with, I think that the big realization is that real lasting positive change comes when ecosystems are developed, not when sold champions are created, right? Like there's this, and I think the philanthropic space has gotten hip to this, but instead of all the funding going towards one behemoth organization, more and more I think philanthropies are giving to coalitions of different organizations that are doing a big job but chunking it down, right? And again, to my earlier point, staying in their lane, really working in a specialized way, but as a coalitional force. And I really wish that more organizations kind of really embodied that approach, right? Of building out ecosystems of people doing the work as opposed to trying to be the institution that's doing the work.
Let's make it personal. What will Richard Trent be doing in 10 years?
I'm pretty obsessed with this idea of connecting conservation and preservation with jobs for Black and Brown communities, for BIPOC communities. I'm just really getting the hang of it with the creation of this Friends Corps at Friends of Anacostia Park, but there's so many different ways to ensure that the restoration of a park is tethered to economic uplift for surrounding communities. So I'd imagine I'll be working in some capacity on a larger scale with building out these green jobs pipelines for BIPOC communities.
Thanks so much. We always like to end in the same place. What's an interesting question that you have for others in the field that you don't actually know the answer to?
I would say, what are the ways that there's only so much you can control, I think, when you're running a nonprofit. And I'm very curious about the ways that other executive directors are fostering office cultures that make it that get everyone sort of oriented to do this work, right? So it's really hard to build office culture over Zoom. And it's really tough when you kind of have this like atomized professional workplace now. And so I'm curious as to how EDs and business leaders are actually building that sense of culture and connection with their teams in order to remain focused on the mission. So I think that's my big question.